Greetings, beloved Princeton United Methodist Church community. It's Pastor Jenny here, and I have an update for you. And I'm reading from Matthew chapter 13, verse 3. And Jesus told them many things in parables, saying, "Listen, a sower went out to sow." This is the word of life. Thanks be to God. Of course, this parable is longer than that, and I actually would love for you to go and read Matthew 13, verses 1 through 9, where you will find the full parable of the sower, sometimes known as the parable of the soils. And I invite you to read it with an Ignatian lens. And there's an Ignatian practice of reading scripture that is, I think, kind of fun. So the idea is that you put yourself in the story. So in this parable, of course, you remember that there was a sower that went out to sow, and the sower sowed seed in multiple places, and there were 4 soils, if you will, and different things happened to that seed in those different soils. And so when we read with an Ignatian lens, we can put ourselves in that story. You can first ask, where do I see myself in that story? And you can kind of choose that way. If you want to be kind of more disciplined about it, perhaps you might start out by saying, if I put myself as soil, where am I in this story? Or what kind of soil am I? Can I reflect on the different experiences in my life where I've been, I've had experiences like these 4 different kinds of things, or maybe it's 2 of them or 1 of them. We can also put ourselves in the place of the seed, or in place of the sower, or in place of the weeds or the bird or the sun, these different kinds of things that affect the soil and the seed. We can even be the fruit that is produced from the seeds growing. So the idea is to play in the scripture and to see where God leads. Bishop Will Willimon is known for saying that we don't so much come to scripture to interpret it, meaning we have some power over it, we gain mastery over it, but instead we come to scripture to let it interpret us. Which is a lovely kind of twist, a kind of parable-like twist on how we often think about Scripture. So to come to Scripture in this Ignatian way, putting ourselves in Scripture, is both playful, but it also can lead us to some deeper places within ourselves, some new revelation about how God is moving in us and leading in us and inviting us to something beyond. So an invitation for you. Again, Matthew 13, 1 through 9 is the parable of the sower. There's actually an explanation that comes later, and we will hear both of those on Sunday, but I invite you to stick with 1 through 9 first before you go to the interpretation part. Of course, you're welcome and encouraged to read that too. We are in our summer lectionary series. We, in the summer, just focus on the prescribed lectionary readings for that year, and this year it's in the book of Matthew. I've also invited you and invite you again to read through the book of Matthew this summer at least once. Sometimes we come to scripture with these little bits. We hear a little section in Sunday worship, we read devotionals, these kinds of things, but an invitation for you to read all of Matthew, not just in one sitting necessarily, though that's fine as well, but to see it as a whole story, and even that as one part of an even bigger story that we have in our scripture. So I also want to share a couple of other things that are happening in the life of the church, some things that you've heard about in worship, that you've heard about in some emails, and the church has been changing always. From the very beginning, it has been adapting, it has had to evolve, it has had to pivot and make decisions and try new things and respond to both what's happening inside the church, but also what's happening outside the church. And this is an era that we find ourselves in that is kind of a pivoting moment. You know, we've all pivoted a lot during COVID. You may be sick of hearing that word, but that is still part of what's happening. But COVID, of course, accelerated a lot of things in our world, but it did this in the church as well. There were already things sort of coming and moving, but lots of things happened a lot faster because of this. And some of these have brought real challenges to us. And when I'm talking about us, I'm talking both, well, in multiple ways. Princeton United Methodist Church as a church itself, and we in parallel to many other churches that are similar to us around the country. But also the United Methodist Church is facing some big changes. The greater just general Christian church is also facing changes. So we're not alone in anything I'm saying here, but also we are who cares for ourselves. So we have to look at these things and how they affect us. So what I mean by all this is some of this you absolutely know. You know that we are now a fully hybrid church. That's not going to change. That is something I think is actually quite beautiful. But that has shifted our congregation in a lot of ways. And one of those ways is we don't know who all our congregation is. That's always a little hard to know in a church our size, but it is especially hard now that we have people who worship fully online and remotely, and some who do a mix of in-person and online. Again, there are so many beautiful gifts in this. I want us to embrace the fact that we are a hybrid church, but also we need some help to work through some challenges around that. How do we get to know you who are online primarily? So if you are someone who worships primarily online and maybe hasn't heard from us beyond the regular communications, or you're not, maybe you have joined us during COVID, I hope that you will let us know that you're out there, that you are there, and that you are connected. And part of what our vision is we talk about it, having a vision of empowering people to live the fullness of life that is offered in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And as we've dug into that vision, part of what we have determined is that we need to have a better understanding of who our people are. And again, some of that's because of change, all these changes, but some of that is just simply that we can only know each other so much by sitting next to each other in the pews. So in the fall, we're going to be having small groups. We're going to be offering that in some new ways, additional small groups, and some opportunities to connect with each other. But one of the things that's also coming into your email box is a survey. There's a multiple part membership discovery task that's happening, project that's happening right now through the leadership of our discipleship board. And so one of the first phase of that is a survey. It's not coming to everybody all at once. It's coming kind of in batches. So I don't know when it will come to your email box, but if you see a survey coming from Princeton United Methodist Church, please don't ignore it. Please open it up, spend a few minutes to help us know more about you. Again, this survey, we can't know everything about you in every moment of in every task. So if you would share with us what you are willing to share in this moment, there will be more to come, and not all through surveys. We'll be doing some other opportunities to share about you. So I encourage you to look for that. Another thing that has changed significantly as our congregation has changed and our ways of engaging has changed is our giving. Our giving has changed substantially, and we're trying to understand more about that and to hear from you and to encourage you. Again, giving is first and foremost about responding to God and responding to what God is doing in our lives, but it is also about participating together, partnering together to enact our vision that we believe God has given us. So what I just said about embracing the fullness of life that Jesus offers us, and his life, death, and resurrection is only one part of our vision. We'll link that vision to you here again. But you have received this week, if you're on our email list, an email about the challenges around giving that we have right now. And I wanted to point you back to that and invite you again to see how you might respond and engage around that. And if you are someone who's behind in your pledge, please catch up. If you are someone for whom giving to church is new, please talk to me and talk to others and let us interpret it for you and share more about what that means. If you find yourself having new rhythms of giving, like many of us have had many new rhythms of lots of things, then I encourage you to spend some time to prayerfully think about how that rhythm might become more regular or more engaged. So there are many things, and in this email you'll also find a lot of options, a lot of ways that you can help us out, from story sharing a story, to serving on a ministry team or a working group, or helping in various ways. So I encourage you to look for that and ask you to help us and join together as part of this beloved community called Princeton United Methodist Church. It is such a joy for me to be in this place with you, to remind you that you are enough because God is enough, to remind you that we were created for joy. And I celebrate being part of this with you. I look forward to talking to you, seeing you soon.